Welcome everyone. My name is Adil Nchabeleng, the leader of Transform RSA, and today we're here to discuss the energy crisis in South Africa. And joining me on the show is my co-host Richard Douglas. Welcome, Richard.
Thank you, Adil. Is there really a crisis? I'm sitting here and I hear a lot of inputs from different people, and I don't know what to believe anymore. And I'm hoping that this format with informed people will help me, for one, and possibly our viewers, to understand if there really is a crisis and what it looks like. One of the things I'm hearing is that the load shedding that we've experienced recently actually was just a political maneuver to get things to happen. So I'm a little confused, and I'm hoping we can unpack that a bit on this forum.
Well, that's a good point that you've actually brought up, Richard. And we have on the show today joined by our esteemed expert leaders in the industry. From my far right is Des Muller, and we have Lufuno, and then Knox Msebenzi. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
And as we were saying, that you feel that we don't have a crisis in South Africa. And maybe just on a short level before we open it up to the panelists, can you just describe why and how is it that we don't have a crisis?
Well, I think it's the narrative that's been put out there that the load shedding is done so that Eskom can get the price increases that they want. I believe NERSA are going to announce price increases on the 1st of March. And so they're hurting the public to get the electorate to put pressure on the politicians to make something happen. And then I hear from other quarters that there isn't a crisis, that Eskom can generate the power we need, that the transmission system's up and running, and the only thing that we should be experiencing is the odd power outage based on unforeseen maintenance issues or breakdowns. So I'd like some clarity on what's really going on and who do we trust for the answer?
That's a good one, actually. Maybe to kick it off and open up the panel, maybe give us your thoughts. Do we have a crisis? Is there an energy crisis in South Africa?
Well, a couple of months ago in Davos, our president said we've got surplus energy, we don't have money, and the whole country got into a state of complacency with regards to the energy capabilities that we have in the country. Today, 6 months later, we're sitting in the situation that we're experiencing today. But as we've seen, and I kind of concur with what you're saying, is that as we've seen around the world, crises can quite often get invented and for another purpose, and so forth, good or bad, But power generation is a very complex area. It's not something that you can go and buy a power station, a coal-fired power station, and run it reliably, switch it on, switch it off, whenever you want it. They are very complex projects, and they need quite a lot of competent technical people to run these plants. They throw challenges at you at any time. So you could sit today and say, listen, I've got excess energy, a surplus of energy, as the president said back then. 3 months later, you're sitting in a situation that we are today. That is possible. Obviously, you want it a lot more predictable, and this is really through the management programs that we've seen come and go. At certain times, the capacity factor or the energy availability factor in Eskom was low and was picked up very, very quickly. There is a lot of controls that one can actually put in to avert these crises, but it is a complex thing.
I like the point that it is a complex one. And from your view, Knox, what do you think?
I think we cannot deny the fact that there is a crisis. What we can debate is the causes of the crisis. Even if the crisis is made to look like a crisis, that system, that situation is already a crisis. What we should be talking about is, are we as a nation ready? Do we do our planning okay? There are countries in this world that have 50-year planning horizons. We cannot have a situation where 12 months ago we are talking about we've got excess energy. 12 months later, we're in a crisis. That is symptomatic of poor planning, and I think that needs to be done a lot better. And coming back to the issue about the crisis, you cannot have a nation, a president of a nation appointing task team where there is no crisis. That in itself is symptomatic of a crisis. Like I said before, we can debate on what causes the crisis, but the crisis is there.
So, just I'm going to come back on your thought on the appointment of the task team. But I mean, from your own view, Lufuno, do we really have an energy crisis in South Africa, or it is something as the views of saying that somewhere somehow we're not being told the truth? What's really going on? Do we have a crisis?
Thanks, Adil. I think we have a crisis of management of energy. And that emanates from the fact that, in fact, verbatim to say, Eskom in 2017 said, load shedding is a thing of the past. And on top of that statement, they said, we need to look for opportunities to sell in other African countries, so that this excess energy that we're talking about tend then to be an investment to make money, should give us return on investment through other countries. 12 months down the line, like they said, you have a situation that I can perceive to be a good plan as opposed to poor planning. A big, good plan to destabilize the system so that you can justify the versatility that you need to bring in the form of new independent power producers that you need to create spaces for. Because if you look at it, one of the things that you can't unpack, you can't pack in your house is maintenance. If you are budgeting, you probably know that if this roof comes down, I'll definitely have to react immediately. But here is a car that you're driving every day and you reduce the budget of maintenance. You are literally saying, I'm planning for this car to fail next year.
So I think coming back to the whole point of the discussions, you've highlighted something very critical: maintenance, as well as the aspect of introduction of the independent power producers. And again, Knox says it is true we have a crisis in South Africa. I mean, based on the views, what do you deduce, Richard? What do you think is really at heart, and what should be the solutions?
I don't know if I'm qualified to say what the solutions can be, but it's alarming, just listening to what Knox was saying, that even if there isn't a crisis, the fact that we're putting one out there is a system in crisis. I think we've talked about planning. What is the general planning horizon for energy utilities like an Eskom?
Yeah, a window of what it takes to actually bring
20 years, 50 years, 60 years?
10 years. The longer the better.
Okay.
The problem with power plants, especially when you're looking at some of the bigger technologies, you don't build them overnight, as we've seen with Kusile and Medupi. They need to take a long term on planning and getting themselves established and ready. So the longer you've got, the better you can plan a very stable system that can deliver to energy security.
So I've got to get my head around the fact that Eskom is an entity. It's a state-owned company. It does its own planning, but then as a nation, we have the integrated resource plan, which is up for a lot of debates. Is that the planning you're talking about that's required for, you mentioned, I think, around 30 years. I think if you look at some of the generation technologies, you're looking at life of plant of 60 years. Is it the integrated resource plan that helps us to navigate these waters?
It is a combination of plans, and the plans must all talk to each other. We have a national development plan, which is talking about certain aspects of what we need in order to combat poverty and employment. If we put that aside and then come up with an integrated resource plan which doesn't even talk to some of those assumptions, in fact, it is an integrated resource plan. The plan should be integrated with other plans, so that we're talking to the same thing. The water people that are planning our water supply situation, we should all have an overall plan for the nation, not to be planning these things in piecemeal. And we spoke about the long-term planning. The Chinese typically are well known for planning for a very long time. They plan typically for 50 years. We went into this problem after 1994 and went into a massive electrification. But we did not, and Eskom warned the country that if we don't do anything by a certain date, we are going to have problems. So we knew about these things.
So we have a crisis, and as you were saying very clearly that if we have a crisis, what seems to not come out clear in this crisis is the key solution.